Hey guys, this is JayKay Talks, episode 2. We're going to be talking about mental health, physical health, and wellness today. So, hope you guys enjoy. So, I wanted to talk about these things today, kind of surrounding COVID and like the pandemic, just because I think all these things are very, I want to say helpful, and then I don't want to say like a necessity, but I think they're very important during this time. And I wonder, and I also think they're not being talked about enough.
I totally agree. I think that the main thing I've been seeing in the news surrounding the pandemic has been obviously where do we go from here, what needs to be done, but also preventative measures, right? We've been talking a lot about how we should be keeping our hands clean, social distancing, things like that to prevent this further spread of the virus. What I'm really happy about with this conversation is that by discussing physical and mental wellness, we're going to be focusing less on preventative measures and more on self-regulating measures and keeping ourselves well at all times.
When you say self-regulating, what do you mean?
What I mean by that is when we are able to strengthen our mind, our body, and our spirit, we can then fight whatever comes our way a little bit more effectively.
I agree.
You know, the pandemic, at least in my perception, has become so vast and so vicious that to try to prevent the spread of it seems to almost be futile. It's everywhere. And if we can bring that focus a little bit more towards keeping ourselves really mentally strong, really physically strong, I'm wondering if that's going to be the better approach.
Yeah, and I think when you look at mental and physical wellness, right, I think it's kind of, at least physically wise, you can kind of put down bullet points onto what we mean physically, right? So what I mean physically is just a certain amount of activity a day. You know what I mean? Getting out there, whether or not it's a very simple activity such as walking around or even doing something that maybe you enjoyed as like a kid. I know I bought a jump rope and I wanted to learn how to jump rope, but that activity itself it can become very strenuous if you use it in like a fitness sense or just in an enjoyment sense. So I think one would be physical activity. The second would be even eating healthy, eating well, getting those food groups in, you know what I mean? Your protein, your greens, a certain amount of carbs and stuff like that. Just don't eat as much junk food and certain stuff like that. I know during this quarantine right now, it's very easy to order out if you have the money to. It's very easy to get that easy meal.
Sure, but also it's definitely more financially lucrative, I think, to go to the grocery store.
I agree.
You know, which I think is what you're saying, right? The difference between going out and going through the McDonald's drive-thru versus really learning about nutrition and what fuels our body.
Yes.
And getting ourselves a couple of really healthy ingredients to throw together.
Yeah, and I know this is pretty backed by science. I'm not one to really say this, but I know it just based off of what I heard is that stress is a big immune system. It hurts your immune system very heavily, or it can.
Stress definitely weakens the immune system. It has been backed by science.
Yes, so I think in that sense, to be calm and have some sort of structure during this time is a very important thing. I think when we have no structure, we tend to spiral out a bit. At least that's what I found within myself.
Right. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience? Like, obviously, I've been present for it, but I'd love to hear maybe more in depth what your experience has been with creating more physical structure for yourself and also what sounds like scheduling structure.
Yes.
What does that look like for you?
So, I'll talk about it. Since at the very beginning of this quarantine, I didn't really know how long this was going to last. It seemed like it was going to last maybe a month, maybe a week. There was really no timetable for a return.
Right.
Obviously, now I think it's been about 2 months, almost 2.5 months.
Since March.
Yeah. So, at the very beginning of this, I didn't really have any structure. I really just flowed with where the day took me. If I wanted to work out right now, if I didn't, it was just very everywhere.
I think a lot of people relate to that.
Yeah, and I felt it in me that this was not good for me. That I wasn't getting what I needed to get done. That there was no responsibility to my day.
Ooh. What did that feel like? Feeling like you're just totally without that structure.
It was sad to me, almost. It was kind of hurting me. What I realized is that
Were you feeling lost?
I wasn't doing what I innately felt I needed to do. So that's why I felt I needed to put responsibility on myself. And what I mean by responsibility is I could wake up at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And at one point I was. But I decided I'm going to start to get up earlier and I'm going to work out. That's my first responsibility of the day. I'm going to read today. I'm going to eat healthy today. I put down certain things in my brain or on paper and go, these are the responsibilities I am taking on today, even though I don't have a structure like work in front of me. Or I'm gonna invest in a new hobby. I'm gonna do something that I've always wanted to do, but I didn't have the time to do. But now I do. It's a time in which I felt as if there was a lot more possibility. So
kind of what we talked about last time, like in our first episode, where we don't have to look at this pandemic, at least on a personal level, as inherently a bad time.
Yes.
Obviously, everything going around is very serious, very catastrophic. There's a lot of really transformative, is the word I'd like to use here, things happening in society. But on a more personal scale, this is a really impeccable time to do exactly what you're doing, to create that structuring.
Yes.
But now, in terms of physical health, do you have any recommendations for how to keep a strong immune system physically during a pandemic like this, so people can, for instance, strengthen their immune systems in a way that if perchance they did get COVID, which, as we know, is super easily spread, and extremely prevalent in our society, right? With, I'm not even going to say the statistic, I'm not totally sure, but it's a significant amount in our country. To say that, well, there's no way I'm going to get it, I think would be irresponsible, right? So how do you suggest that we can physically strengthen ourselves in the case that we do get it?
So in that topic, I will be speaking only based upon me. So I can't speak, I'm not a physical fitness person. I'm not a person who in this topic should be a person that you should look to. I can only talk about me personally. So during this time, I've decided to take up running. I've decided to just do calisthenics and just have a certain kind of routine schedule in working out. Just to kind of build that sort of body stress. Because to have a little bit of stress is not always a bad thing. And I think it actually strengthens your immune system.
By building like a resistance, would you say?
Exactly. So I even and don't quote me again, but I think it's Pavlov. I remember watching the Joe Rogan podcast on how he talked about how when you eat certain greens and stuff like that, more than anything, it's strengthening your immune system. It's helping you. So when you get healthy foods in your body, it's strengthening your immune system. You're not allowing these, in a sense, poisonous foods to come in and hurt and cause inflammation and make your body work a lot harder than what it needs to do. So the healthier you eat, the less your body works, and the more it can actually fend off certain things such as like viruses and stuff like that.
Because it's not spending so much time digesting.
Yes, and based upon people who maybe have COVID right now and stuff like that, I would say I would follow the recommendations for what you should do right now based upon what you read online from doctors and stuff like that. I don't know if...
Well, there's a lot of preventative, like I said, just in my personal research, I've been seeing a lot of preventative advice given, right? Yes, maybe there have been some nutrition articles that I've glazed over. I can't really say, but at least in my news app on my iPhone, most of the articles I've been seeing have been about staying inside, sheltering in place, social distancing as a way to keep ourselves COVID free. But again, going back to kind of how I originated this thought process, which was, if we do get it, what can we do, right? And the reason why I'm so passionate about that is because that was the exact mindset I had when this all happened. So when I heard that COVID was becoming rampant, especially in our area here in New York, I did not allow fear to immediately overtake me, because I said, okay, it's a virus. Okay, I'm getting the facts. Slowly the facts were rolling in. It seemed to be people with compromised immune systems and the elderly that were being primarily affected by it. I assessed myself. I said, well, I'm healthy. I'm in, my early adulthood. I have no underlying health conditions. So my focus is, well, I still need to live.
Yeah.
And right now they haven't shut down my work. So I need to be making sure my body is ready to fight. So immediately is when I started dosing up on true, authentic ascorbic acid vitamin C with no rose hips, nothing, no fillers, just pure vitamin C.
Got ya.
Started to...
Where do you actually get that from?
You can get that at like a health food store,
Okay.
even online. If you just look up pure ascorbic acid vitamin C, it's one of the most, I guess, undiluted, I would say, forms of vitamin C. So it's especially effective in strengthening our immune systems. I also started to cut out junk food, processed food. I mean, I'm already a vegetarian, as you know, but I really started to hone in on vegetables, fruits. I was eating fruit probably about 4 times a day when this whole thing started. And in that moment, I already felt I had nothing to fear because I knew even if this thing did hit me, I'm loading myself up. I'm keeping myself so strong, so secure, so healthy that it'll pass, right? When I was a kid, I had significant cases of like bronchitis.
Same.
Right? So you even know, like, our bodies are so resilient.
Yes.
Like we can really overcome these pretty serious things as long as we keep ourselves strong.
Yes.
So absolutely, physical vitality, as you were saying, keeping ourselves under just the right amount of physical stress, right? Pushing your body to limits by running, by jump roping, by just keeping that moving. That's helping your body also stay vigilant, functioning at its highest capacity.
And the one thing I also wanted to kind of note on was, or put forth was, a lot of the time when we start working out, it's hard to kind of keep consistency. And I know I talked a little bit about this last podcast, but set goals. That's how I do it. If you can only do 20 push-ups, push yourself to do 20 push-ups maybe for that week each day, right? And then try and do 30 the next week. Keep pushing yourself in each goal in order to kind of keep that consistency. Because if you have goals and you want to be able to get to those goals, that's going to kind of give you more of an initiative in order to keep pushing.
Right.
So that's the one thing I would say if you're having trouble with consistency, is to set goals for yourself and get there. So, but back to what we were originally talking about with like physical health during this time, during the quarantine and stuff like that. So I think now since we sort of covered physical health, do you want to kind of move on to mental health and stuff like that? Or did you have anything?
On the topic of mental health now, how I was saying I started off this pandemic with strengthening myself physically. In turn, that did a lot for my emotional health. So I'm feeling more ready and capable and prepared to handle the virus by strengthening my body through healthy foods and vitamin C loading and things like that. But now I need to stay mentally strong. I need to, as you said, create that structure, right? Now we're in quarantine. So my job is shut down. I find myself in quarantine, and now it's like, okay, now what? Where do I go from here? So then it becomes creating structure, keeping yourself strong, keeping yourself mentally stimulated, because we can get really bored inside a house.
Yes.
We can actually start to just like, at least it feels like to me, just shut down.
Overthink, even like in a way where it's just spiral out into overthinking about things that almost kind of I overthink a lot when you tend to just think out situations that are not even there. Just overthink and have a lot of anxiety from that. Well, what if this happens? Well, what if that happens? Well, and in this time, I think it's very important for your mental health to just stay calm. To just recognize, okay, I know I can't control what's outside of me, but I know I can control my thoughts. I know I can take a deep breath in, and I love this saying. It goes, what am I going to think next? And in that moment, you'll recognize, holy crap, I can actually control what I'm thinking. And it really helps you calm down. It's little affirmations like that and little ideas like that that really help you find your I like the word zen. It brings you back to home in yourself a lot of the time.
I like that.
So I think right now in mental health, the one thing you should do is keep calm and recognize what you can control versus what you can't.
I like that.
So,
and then going off of that, even taking what you can control and really honing in on your ability to do what you can within that realm, right? So right now, can I control the government giving me my stimulus check? No, probably not. I can sit on the phone for 8 hours. I don't think they'll pick up. But what I can control is getting creative about ways to make money, right? I know I've been seeing a lot of people making masks.
Mm-hmm.
People are kind of honing in on these skills they previously didn't have.
Yeah.
Sewing, cooking even, and selling the food to people who want, meals made for them.
Yes, yeah.
So we are really unlocking new capabilities for ourselves in order to stay afloat. And that is working within that realm of what we can control.
Yes.
And when we do that, we realize so much about ourselves.
Yes.
So for me, a big part of the quarantine was I'm inside. Anytime I go outside, they're going to tell me that I need to be back inside. So right now, I need to make the best of my home environment. I know a lot of people are cleaning, things like that. For me, I've been taking this time, as you know, to meditate and really work on myself and face those really ugly corners of my mind I didn't want to face.
I agree, yeah.
And in turn, that's making me a mentally stronger person.
Yes.
So that when all of this eventually clears, which God knows when that's going to be, I'm emerging as a new person.
Yes.
I think we can both agree that after this pandemic has ceased, or at least gotten back under control, nothing will be the same again.
Yeah, I think kind of going off what you're saying strengthening your character, right? In a way, you're strengthening who you are in all facets, physically, mentally, spiritually. You even talk about meditation and sort of stuff like that. I think that is a very important thing during this quarantine that I have done as well. It's strengthening those parts of yourself if you felt insecure and if you felt you could never come or overcome or do, that now is the time, because all you have is time itself, right? Those things that have always tricked you and have always felt like have been your boundaries or your right word is capacity, right? Well, now here's the time in which you can really honestly find yourself and figure out who you are. Yeah, I mean, everything that you identified with now has kind of come down. You now, I know we talked about this last time, but you now have time to create anew. And I'm not going to speak any more on that because we did talk about that last time and I don't want to repeat myself. But
what I'd love to talk more about is maybe, obviously we've touched upon like how we can keep ourselves physically strong, how we can keep ourselves mentally strong. What I'd also like to talk a little bit more about is what goes on after this.
That's a good point.
Obviously, a solution seems a little far away.
Yes.
I personally could sit here and talk for hours about the many solutions we could have to keep this pandemic at bay. But I don't really think that's in my realm of control. I don't think I have the ability to create a vaccine right now.
That would kind of be coming back to us overthinking and us trying to figure out things that are out of our control right now.
100%. So then I'm going to focus on right now what I can control, which is preparing myself for when society is open again. For when I can go back to work and go to the grocery store without a mask. What does that look like for Kara? Well, for one, I'll say that I'm definitely going to keep distancing from people who are coughing and sneezing in public. If I see a person sneezing, there's a very good chance I'm going to walk down the other aisle in the grocery store and not down theirs. But more so than that, too, I think that I will emerge from this quarantine much more conscientious of my diet, my routine, my mental health needs. I think I will be a lot less lax with myself, a little more disciplined. I'm holding myself at higher expectations now. I'm realizing we're not truly all that safe ever. We have a great military here in the United States, but that couldn't keep the virus out, could it? So we need to protect ourselves.
Was it Helen Keller who said security is just a superstition?
That was Helen Keller, and
yes.
I love that quote because it's so true. We are never truly safe. The goal is to create a sense of security within ourselves, and I think the best way to do that is by unlocking our full capability.
And even talking about that a little bit more, right? Comfortability is not security. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
When you're comfortable, you might feel secure, but in actuality, That's not true.
You're temporarily withdrawn from danger.
Yes.
But eventually you're going to have to get out, right?
Yep.
Eventually you're going to have to emerge from that cocoon and go do something, right?
Yes.
And so, and listen, I'm not insensitive to people who struggle with mental illness, like being scared to walk outside their home, anxiety, social anxiety, things like that. If you're pleased with your quality of life being inside, then more power to you. I know for myself, and I'm only going to speak for myself here, I want to live my life feeling safe, feeling good, feeling empowered, and feeling like I'm living to my fullest potential.
Yes.
In order for myself to do that, I know that I really need to be making my mind, body, and spirit health a priority even after this whole thing is done. Because I think you and I have talked a lot about what we've been doing here inside our own homes. When the stay-at-home orders have been lifted, though, I don't see any reason why we should stop doing what we're doing here at home, but just out in the world. That same discipline you're talking about, right? Making that time for working out. You bought a jump rope, right? When the stay-at-home order lifts, are you going to stop jump roping?
No.
And why is that?
Because now I to some degree identify it and I enjoy it. It's something I want to put forth in my regular life.
Sounds like you found something that empowers you.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think it's only best that we continue to empower ourselves even after all of this has moved on.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that fully. And I kind of jumping off your point too, where I've struggled with anxiety. I've struggled with being in social situations and having to, in a sense, talk with people and not overthinking. And I struggled with that a lot in my life. I think the one thing that got me over it personally, and I only speak personally here, was looking at myself and going, what life do I want to live? Do I want to look back on my life and feel like I didn't do everything I wanted to do? Mm-hmm. That was really eye-opening for me, that look, if I talk in a social function, I do something that is out of my comfort zone, at least I can look back on it and say that I tried. And if I failed, well, I failed and learned.
Right.
So I think more than anything, what drives me a lot of the time is looking at myself and going, I'm trying my absolute best, and worst comes to worst, if I fail, I'm going to get back up and try again. Wow. That to me is the most powerful thing I can do. I'm going to keep trying, keep going, keep doing what I need to do, and keep trying new things and experimenting, because I want to look back on my life and go, I did everything I wanted to do, and it might have not all worked out, but I did it.
Now, what do you recommend for people who are so debilitated by anxiety? And I speak from personal experience, right? Because there were times where I would allow myself to be so debilitated by my thoughts and my overwhelming emotions that I wouldn't even take that first step to be able to try something. I would basically convince myself altogether that it was just a much safer life for me to stay exactly where I was. What could you recommend to somebody like that?
Ask yourself, is a safe life a good life? Ask yourself that honestly. Are you honestly being happy? Because if you're having these thoughts, are you truly happy? Do what you feel will make you the happiest at the same time, you know? And I think the idea of taking the first step doesn't need to be a big one. It really doesn't. Take small steps. I love this quote where the last thing to bloom on a fruit tree is the actual fruit. You are a stem right now growing. You're a seed actually growing in the ground. And that seed needs to take small steps in order to grow into that fruit tree. And once you keep taking those small steps, you're building up courage for yourself to take bigger ones. And when you finally take those bigger steps, that's what creates your tree. And when you finally create the tree that you want, the fruit starts to come. And what is the fruit? Well, we always say the fruit of your labor, right? The fruit and
it's abundance.
Yes,
things you value.
The fruit of what you want. You know, it's doing stuff like that in order to create what you want.
Right.
So
so you just I know for me, sometimes even just getting up and going to take a shower was difficult. So even just being able to take that step out of my bed and just go jump in the shower, that is that one step closer to that fruit on that tree. And just keeping that focus and keeping that regulation of, okay, I went to the shower today. Well, now tomorrow And just for me, what helped was constantly keeping that forward-facing mindset. I really tried my best not to ever look backwards. Even if I regressed, I recognized that a regression is not a permanent, backward-facing motion. Simply, it is a minor setback to propel you forward more.
Yes.
I had somebody tell me, an older gentleman, that growth is an upward spiral staircase. And he explained it further by saying, with each rung that we ascend, we are always going to come back around to the same point, which will look like regression, but now we are simply a rung higher than we were.
Yes.
So what seems like a regression is not a failure. It's simply looking at your growth from a different vantage point so that you may continue to move forward.
And even going off that run, right? Each time that you've gone up, you might feel like you're in the same spot, but no, you've learned from the last time you were there. It's experience, right?
Just keep doing.
Yes.
Right? Like for me, it's like it does just keep doing something. Objects in motion stay in motion. Yes. And that was a huge help for me, was just trying to stay in as much motion as I possibly could, because I knew the moment I stopped, that was it. I was done. I was giving up on myself.
Yeah. And you talk about taking a shower. It's just one small step a day in order to kind of get you to where you want to be, right? If you go, I'm going to take that shower, and then I'm going to eat healthy today. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But I feel as though that's my capacity. Okay, then do one extra thing tomorrow. You know what I mean? Keep trying new things in order to build that life that you sort of want for yourself. It's all just, it's like a domino effect, And
that actually loops back to our conversation about mental resistance.
Yes.
Right? Building that mental resistance. Starting off with the 20 push-ups so that you can eventually get to 30 and 40. Mm-hmm. Starting off with that shower so that tomorrow you can do not just a shower, but a shower and a healthy meal.
Yeah.
And then the next week you do a shower, a healthy meal, and a phone call.
Yeah.
And then a shower, a healthy meal, and pay a bill and a phone call. Yeah. So then it just, right? It just,
and
you start slowly, to build that mental resistance, that capacity.
Starts to expand.
And I love the word capacity, because we all do have a capacity, right? And we'll feel when we hit that capacity, that's when we're like, woof, I need a break.
Yes.
And that tells us, okay, like, Kara's reached her capacity, I need to go sit. And that capacity is also not a death sentence. That capacity tells us this is all we can do right now. But if you'd like to do more, and that's where it comes in of, I want to do more, right? Am I happy with my quality of life? No, I want to do more. Okay, let me keep hitting that capacity, but then do one extra thing past it, and then one extra thing past that capacity. And before I know it, I'm now living a better life for myself.
Like you're saying, that mental resilience right there.
100%.
Letting yourself know that you can get a little stronger each day. I was telling you earlier that you see these people do these unbelievable feats in running or unbelievable things in fitness, right? I always love to look at fitness as examples, because you have to remember, these people, before they did these things, they didn't think that they could do them. Or maybe in some cases they did, but they hadn't done them yet, right? Mm-hmm. Well, they did small steps each day, recognizing that they could build resilience and resistance in order to keep pushing. That's almost like what you have to do with your mind too, to just keep building and pushing and pushing. So
absolutely. And I think ultimately the one thing this pandemic is teaching us is how to push our mind to some incredible limits. Obviously, not everyone has been able to do that successfully. I think a lot of people are really hurting, but I also think a lot of people are getting stronger here. And as much as this pandemic has been an absolute catastrophe, I do believe that as a collective, we will emerge stronger from it.
I agree.
More vigilant, more well-prepared, more armed and ready, especially on a medical standpoint, for something like this in the future. I know we're already having incredible breakthroughs in medicine. There's so many things that this virus has been teaching doctors and nurses that are pushing the limits of what we know right now about medicine. For instance, my grandmother, who's 78 years old and has underlying health conditions, heart disease specifically, beat COVID. She had coronavirus and immediately was feeling her shortness of breath, and had my family member call 911. She was taken to the hospital in an ambulance. It was looking really bleak for a while. The nurses were actually telling her that she needed to go on a ventilator because of how low her oxygen levels were, and if she didn't, she would die. My grandmother in that moment made the decision, well, you know what, then I'm ready to die. I don't want to be put on the ventilator. So the nurse then said, okay, well, then you can expect to be gone by tomorrow. My grandmother lived, and she's home right now. So I could sit here and get mad at that nurse that said that to her, but what I'll say instead is I really pray that that nurse learned we don't know everything there is to know about health and wellness and medication and how to treat patients. This virus is checking us big time. It is testing our limitations in more ways than one, on a personal level and on a collective level. We are really realizing how much we need to be growing and we need to be doing better. And I hope that the doctors that treated my grandmother realize there's a lot we don't know here.
Yeah, and I like your point about collectively that we will become more of a resilient nation and people together. I think the one thing that we can take from this is the lesson that it's giving us, and that the knowledge that we can take from it, that we are not these beings who are invincible. We are beings who are very susceptible to this, and that we need to be, I think, in a sense, more well prepared and more and see this more maybe for what it is. We need to be ready for certain things like this in the future. And I think that is the one thing that we will be. At least that's what I think. That's what I hope. And if there's one thing that I've learned is that when you put something out into the universe and you keep believing it and thinking it more than likely, it's more likely to happen.
Absolutely.
So
I, by the way, really love what you said. And I just wanted to really emphasize this point because I think it's so important. We, as a human race, are not invincible.
Yeah.
Whoa. That's so important.
Yeah.
I just really wanted to emphasize that because I do feel that sometimes we forget that.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think we got it made, we're living the American dream. It could always be worse. That's the thing I always hear, right? It could always be worse. It's like, yeah, but it could always be better. And you're so right. We're not invincible. We need to be doing better.
So, I really enjoyed this conversation. I did. I think. Have anything else to say on this topic as of right now? Actually, I actually do have one more thing to say. I didn't want to talk about the statistics and kind of about exactly COVID itself, because what I have gathered just based on the information that I've seen, there has been a lot of back and forth information. Certain people saying something else and then another person saying this. So I didn't want to talk about that. I only really wanted to talk about things on a personal level. So I just wanted to just say that to you guys. So
we did try to keep this talk very personal because, and I even said this to Jason before we started, there are so many different experiences that people are having with this pandemic, and we obviously cannot speak on behalf of everybody, but we can speak on behalf of what we've experienced in hopes that maybe some of you who have identified with our experiences or feel similarly to the way we do will find something beneficial from our conversation.
Absolutely.
So, on that note,
yeah,
good talk.
Yeah, guys,
That's a good JayKay talk.
Damn right it was. Fuck yeah.
Well, be well, everybody, and we'll be back again soon with more talks.
Stay safe and be well.